Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Quote Unquote with KK. Let me remind you our full report of 2024 Healthcare and Life Sciences Investment Manifesto is now available on our website. Based on the manifesto, all cohorts of the Indian generational population and people globally want to reconnect and experience harmony through the three H. What are these three H? These are happiness, happenings, and hookup. Taking this manifesto forward, our 2024-25 season 5 theme is also the three H: happiness, happenings, and hookup. Now, coming to today's podcast. In our manifesto, our bet number 22 discusses on mythological pilgrimage, wellness, spiritual health. That is going to be a major trend in the next 5 years. Why is it so? You see, during the epidemic and the pandemic, the people felt that their lives were in danger due to the coronavirus. This danger and the extended lockdown led people to explore spirituality as a way to reduce stress and danger in their life. Once the lockdown was lifted and freedom to travel was once again possible, people decided to travel to destinations to explore and experience the spirituality that they were trying to experience in their four walls of their homes during the lockdown, virtually visiting these places. As a result, the Global Wellness Institute estimates that wellness tourism will reach a record 1 trillion by end of this year and 1.3 trillion dollars by 2025. Obviously, spiritual wellness and travel contribute significantly to this growth. Spiritual wellness and travel, therefore, is the next wave within this trend of travel and wellness. It involves seeking deeper connection through spiritual practices, mindfulness, and self-discovery. Destinations with rich spiritual heritage, such as ancient temples, pilgrimage sites, and serene natural landscapes, attract travelers seeking inner peace and growth. To discuss this trend and the bet that we have taken, I was looking at someone who could do full justice to this issue on this issue of spiritual wellness and travel. I looked at some of the wellness and healing experts who have worked with me on one of my projects in the past. But then they would be able to talk about the wellness issues and leave the spiritual wellness and travel to pilgrimages in the passing in their discussion. That's when I thought of Devdutt to bring him on our podcast. He promptly recommended me to read two of his books, which he has authored, which we will discuss on the podcast, apart from the other issues and points. These books include Pilgrim Nation, The Making of Bharatvarsh, Bahubali, 63 Insights into Jainism. I'm going to link the books in our podcast. Now, let me talk about Devdutt. As always, we will be fact checking what ChatGPT says about Devdutt Patnaik, and then I will add what ChatGPT does not know about Devdutt and dive deep into our today's topic of discussion: Bharatvarsh, Pilgrim Nation, the destinations to spiritual wealth. Devdutt's ChatGPT profile reads as under. Devdutt is a renowned mythologist, writer, and speaker from Mumbai, India. His work delves into the fascinating world of mythology, exploring cultural truth through stories, symbols, rituals. Here are some key points about background and education. Born on December 11, 1970 in Mumbai, India, Patnaik initially pursued a medical career. He holds an MBBS degree from Grand Medical College, Mumbai, and later obtained a diploma in comparative mythology from Mumbai University. Mythology and writing. Patnaik has authored and illustrated over 50 books, and let me tell you, I have read over 12 of his books, covering topics related to Hinduism, Indian mythology, and spiritualism. His work include titles like ABC of Hinduism, Yoga and Mythology, 64 Asanas and Their Stories, and so on. As a regular columnist for newspapers like Midday, Times of India, and Dainik Bhaskar, he shares his insights on mythology and culture. TED Talks and podcasts. Patnaik delivered a TED Talk emphasizing the relevance of mythology in modern life. He hosts a radio show podcast called the Devdutt Patnaik Show on Radio Mid. Mythology and management. Patnaik's unique perspective combines mythology with management principles, and we're going to talk about these as well in our podcast today. He explores how ancient wisdom can inform contemporary leadership and decision making. TV series and consultation. He has been a story consultant for mythological television series like Mahabharata and Siya Ke Ram on Star TV network. The show Devlok with Devdutt Patnaik on Epic Channel demystifies Indian folklore and tradition. Impact and recognition. In 2016, he made his debut on the Forbes India Celeb 100 list. His journey from from medicine to mythology has enriched our understanding of cultural narratives and their significance. Now, let me tell you what ChatGPT does not know about Devdutt, which is my personal interaction and relationship with Devdutt Patnaik.
I have no idea.
The rest was what I read from the chat GPT about you.
Okay.
And I was just introducing to the audience and our listeners what chat GPT does not know about you. I was first introduced to Devdutt when he was the chief belief officer of the Future Group. And when we were looking for a keynote speaker at NASCOM Product Conclave, my fellow co-organizer MR from Indian Diaspora and Sandal Partners recommended Devdutt to be the keynote speaker. And mind you, it was a mind-blowing keynote with standing ovation from the audiences who were techies and founders of a startup. And after that, I briefly interacted with Devdutt as he had to fly back to Mumbai. So it was a very brief interaction. But our interactions never stopped. And after that, I heard Devdutt at various investor days and forums for the next few years. And then when he had given up his job and became a full-time author of books, that's when I have read 9 of his books, including the 2 that we are going to talk about it today. And in 2021, Devdutt first appeared on our podcast to discuss the mantra for. And let me tell and inform Devdutt that such was the impact on our audience on the book and his talk that we had to dedicate our 2022 season to happiness. So thank you so much for spreading that happiness and knowledge and connecting mythology and our cultural values, which was so much impactful that our people wanted an encore to have you on our podcast back,
Thank you so much.
as well as dedicate a whole season on happiness where we called in a lot of people to discuss various aspects of happiness other than mythology. So, Devdutt, it's a real pleasure to bring you back on a podcast and adding to what our research and what our bet number 22 talks about. Let me begin by your take on spirituality and what does mythology have to say about spirituality?
So, spirituality is a word which has been used only from the 19th century. So, before 19th century, nobody used this word spirituality. And it's basically in Europe when they started exploring psychology that the word spirituality came. So, really, psychology and spirituality have a very close connection. In spirituality, people focus on what they believe is supernatural. In psychology, you don't believe in the supernatural. That's all. In the material scientific world, we focus on measurement. But there are many things in life you cannot measure. For example, I cannot measure your jealousy. And spirituality will talk about, science will talk about your financial status, your physical measurements, your height, your weight, your glucose index. But it cannot talk about jealousy. There is nothing, there's no medicine for jealousy. There is no diagnosis for jealousy. We know it exists, but you cannot see it, you can't feel it. It's not there, which is used by instruments. So spirituality deals with the non-measurable. That's the simplest definition one can give. Everything else is depending on which school you go. But the world of the non-measurable is the world of the.
So, am I right in saying that spirituality starts where the science of measurement ends?
Well, it's not about a start or end because they exist simultaneously.
Okay.
So they do exist. The problem is we live in a world which values measurement. And in Sanskrit, the word for it would be Purush and Prakriti. Prakriti is the world of measurement, material. And really, our entire society today is based on measurement. So you are in management, everything is about numbers, right? The whole world revolves around numbers.
Correct.
The world without numbers has always existed, but has never been valued in the modern, technocratic, scientific world, while this was not the case before. And this is why people are giving spirituality as a subject. Otherwise, it was always there in our lives. We always spoke.
I have a doubt about myself. I feel that I'm spiritual in nature. I don't practice spirituality per se by visiting temples or pilgrimage locations. So, according to you, am I spiritual or
So
do I
all
practice
human beings are
spirituality?
no, all human beings are spiritual. There's no person who's not spiritual. They may not use the word, but if they're dealing with their emotions and they're asking questions about why I exist, what is the purpose of life, they've gone into the realm of spirituality. What you are talking about is religion, which is a social performance, makes you part of a tribe. So a social performance. So a tribal, how does a tribe come together? They have performed a certain set of rituals. You dress in a particular way, you talk in a particular way, eat in a particular way, you perform in a particular way, and there is a particular norm that is given to you, which which is a performance. So how do we today identify a Muslim man? He will, until he does a very dress in a particular way, eats in a particular way. Otherwise, you would not. Your friend would sit in front of you, talk to you. You don't immediately say he's Muslim until he does something which is a performance, which would be the where they praise. He says, "Oh, I want to go out and pray," or "I will not work on a Friday," or he will not eat a particular thing. That will tell you his religion. But if you didn't know anything about that and he just spoke about happiness or unhappiness or existential angst, then he's a spiritual person. So we can easily separate the two. One is, as I said, performative, social. The other is personal, private, internal.
Now, you just talked about Muslim and Hindus, and the faiths have a very different approach to how they look at life and afterlife. We talked about it also in our previous podcast as well. So, how does spiritualism and spirituality differ across different faith and across different generations of age cohort, younger, older? Because we discussed about, Grastashram and Vidashram as well in our previous podcast, and what one does for self actualization and realization as spirituality connotes. How would this differ across faith and across different people across their age and different walks of life?
So see, religion has more a role, as I said, a social role. It is not trying to make you a nice person. It is trying to make you part of a community. So are you part of the community? So are you part of a caste? Are you, if you are a Brahmin, have you done a Upayanayana? Have you done your thread ceremony? Have you done rituals? If you're a Vaishnav, do you go to these temples? Do you perform these festivals? So the anxiety is of social group. Do you belong to a social group? Do you function in a it doesn't bother whether you're a good person or a bad person. Are you secure, happy, decent? It doesn't matter. It's a set of rules, and if the set of rules have been followed or a set of expectations has been met, you belong to that. So it has more a political, social, economic role. Economic, because some of the religions have things like tithe, that is sacred tax. You have to pay a particular tax to a religious leader. You have to make your presence felt in a certain religious gathering. So, but when it comes to spirituality, it doesn't. It asks. It is a very personal and private journey. Religion may provide you the tools to make that journey, but religion authority really don't care about. If you go to the temple regularly, you perform the ritual, they'll say, "Oh, he's a very religious person." But he religious adi. But what he's going through in his mind, is he a nice person? Does he deal what the traumas he's going through personally, privately? Religion honestly doesn't care about it. There'll be texts about it, but really that's not the goal of religion. The goal of religion is to create a social group which is together, works together. The spiritual journey is always a personal and a private. And so some people in a Christian framework will say, "I found Jesus and I got my answer." But it's a very personal journey he has gone on. It is not created through the religion, has just given him a kind of a scaffolding, a framework to help him deal with his anxieties, his insecurity, his desires, cravings, disappointment, lack of faith, all that. But the journey remains private. So private versus public is a good. Religion only provides you with a frame. And what happens as far as generations are concerned, you really as a child are so dependent on your parents, and they take care of your needs in a way that you don't really reflect on life, focusing on achieving a kind of finish line, an achievement. We use the word success for it. Spirituality comes only in two places: when you have achieved success or success eludes you, and you suddenly find yourself unhappy and things are not working out, or they worked out for you, but it did not seem to give you the kind of joy that you assumed it would bring. Then you start asking the purpose of life. Why do I exist? Existential angst. And then your personal journey exists. And whether you take a religious route, a secular, non-religious route, a secular route, it doesn't. There'll be many paths out there. You can pick up Buddhism, you can Sufism, you'll pick up all kinds of, but they're all personal journey. You might choose a guru. A guru may sort of, but really what happens is after some time you enjoy being part of a community, and therefore again you become part of a social framework, which is like joining a YPO or a EO or joining a Guruji's ashram. And it's really the same thing. It creates a sense of a camaraderie. So it's public again, but its own spirituality is always private, never public. Never 10 people cannot say we are spiritual, because the path is always a lonely.
Got it. So that's a great way to explain what me and a lot of our listeners were doubting and having doubts about spirituality, religion. And that's a great take, your take and clarification. Thank you. They say that mind, body, spirit alignment leads to nirvana. And I read it somewhere in one of your books as well. I think Business Sutra or somewhere. I don't remember the book. And to that, mind wellness is the true north. I wanted to get back to the Vedic and the mythological genesis, how these three, mind, body, spirit, are intertwined, and why is there an alignment required for one to actually explore the path of spiritualism or go to that path of spiritualism?
So, see, in modern conversation, somehow there's a separation between mind and spirit. I don't do that because spirit is just the old word used for the mind. The word, the psyche is the word that was used before, from where psychology comes in. Psyche was translated as spirit. And really, from a very practical point of view, we can do hair splitting arguments and it's a waste of time. But really, you are a combination of your body and your mind, and nothing, everything else is theory. But what is this? If you want to use the part which is not there in modern cognition, but which is a very central part of Indian cognition, is the other, the person around. You don't exist in isolation. You exist in an ecosystem of people, organisms. And this is something which is unique to Chinese and Indian thought. It is not there in the Western thought. So Western thought, what a unique phenomena about it, it somehow has kept nature out of the conversation. So if you see the way it is very anthropocentric. It's all around the human being. Because God creates the world and man is the highest creature who's given in charge of nature. So you don't find, for example, when you read the Bible or the Quran, there are conversations on mountains and rivers and seas and oceans. They're almost inanimate. They don't play a role. They're a background. But if you go to Chinese, or if you Taoism especially, or you read Indian work, nature plays a very important. Relationships and people play a very important. And therefore, when they use the word Atma, Brahman, what they're saying is the world around you, which is connected with the world within. And this conversation of connection is a unique idea, I feel, to where Vedas play a very. The problem in modern language is because we are used to Maslow, and everybody reads Maslow. Now, Maslow is highest level for him is again self-actualize, and this really comes from a Greek way of thinking, where the Greeks were obsessed with the self. They never thought of the other. So it's a highly individualistic frame, and most of us in our education system are trained and educated in an individualistic framework. So even when we like the Buddha who walks away from his family, sits down, and we say, oh, he's such a spiritual person because he is withdrawn from the family. If you read the Jain scriptures, they talk about the Tirthankaras who are away from the family. This isolationism has not been understood in the Indian context because, as I said, in the 19th century, we are deeply influenced by Western way of thinking, and the Western way of thinking is highly individual. While the Indian model, when we talk about spirituality, it doesn't exist outside the world. It's always in connection with the world. So the words are used as yajna and yoga. These are two words that are yoga. Unfortunately, is again taught as a private yoga day. You see one man sitting and doing all these exercises. But yoga basically means connecting with the world around. And it's an emotional connection. While yajna is again a connection, but it's not an emotional connection. It's a material connection. So the purpose of a yajna is to repay your debts to the world. So the model is always about what do I owe the world and what does the world owe me. And since you are a financial guy, your listeners are coming from the financial community. Let me explain this in a slightly different and fun way. Western model are based on legal system. Your journey is about being right or wrong. And who decides what is right and wrong? It comes from a transcendental, non-human source called God. So am I good? Am I bad? Am I right? Am I wrong? That is a primary big concern in a Western. And you're answerable only to God. So the concept of Qayamat, judgment day. I'm answerable not to you, not to anybody in society. I'm only answerable to God. And therefore, it's this kind of an individualistic connection with the divine end. There is no lateral connection with my neighbor, with my friend, with people around. At best, it will be a tribal idea that my community, church, the ummah, my community, the chosen people, at best. But it's not the whole world or the cosmos. These words don't exist. In India, in Buddhism, Jainism, it is an accounting frame, not a legal. So actions are not right or wrong. Actions are either they create debt or they produce credit. So it's debit, credit all the time. And this is a very different way of looking at the world. So when we say the Vedic way of looking at the world, the Buddhist way of looking at the world, the Jain, the thing to remember is that we have to step out of a legal framework and enter an accounting of debit and credit. And now spirituality becomes, how do I end all my debt? I should not owe anyone anything. And no one should owe anything. So liberation happens when you have no debt and you have written off all. So you are not bound to anyone with a debt. So you have repaid all your debt. And others are not bound because you have written off all. Now, when there are no debt, there is more freedom. So the words, now it makes sense when you see it from an accounting. If you use the legal framework in India, it just doesn't. You won't understand the scriptures. It doesn't. Unfortunately, in English, we are so used to, like I mean, the worst translation of the word dharma is righteous, because righteousness is from a legal. Ram is right. Krishna is right. The moment people say that, I cringe, because it's just not, you're not getting the story. You are trying to explain football using the rules of cricket. They're two different games, and the legal framework is very different from the account.
So I can just see an analogy. The non or the Abrahamic, faith have a boss subordinate relation. God is your boss. You are the subordinate. End of life, you'll have an appraisal. You'll get a promotion or you'll not get a promotion. Whereas our Hindu mythology and Hindu faith, such as all the derivatives of it, have a very communal and a very afterlife accounting principle to say you have to continue on to second innings or third innings till your debit credit is all nullified.
But this is theory. Please understand, most people
Yeah.
who explain Hinduism today use the boss subordinate model. So
Acha.
99.9% of people who speak about Hinduism today use the legal frame, because our mind
Okay.
is, for the last 200 years, you
Anglicized.
observe how you will find a Sikh guru talking, or you will find a Hindu guru talking. There is this constant positioning that, you are answerable to Krishna, you're answerable to Ram. And I'm like, I never read this in any scripture. But people ask me, Devadas, what are the commandments that I can find in the Gita? How does Gita tell us to live my life? Now, when people say these sentences, they're coming from the boss subordinate. They're just packaging it in Hindu language. Krishna ne kaha hai. You go to TikTok, you are not TikTok anymore, but now we have Reels. They'll say, Krishna aise kehte hain karne ke liye. God has told you to be vegetarian. And I'm like, that sounds very Abraham. But they don't get it when they'll say, nahi, Bhagwan ne kaha hai hame veg. I said, acha, kaha kaha hai? Or then we'll be judged by God. And I'm like, really? And it comes as a surprise to people when I say there is no concept of judgment day in Hinduism. And they're like, but Ram is a prophet. I said, prophet is an idea which comes from Middle East. So when I'm saying it, and that is why mythology study this is what mythological studies reveal. And you can suddenly realize most of the Gurujis are really, this is the problem when you say all religions are the same. You start using language from one book to, as I said, explaining cricket using the rules of football just because dono mein ball hai. But dono mein ball, it's very different world. The rules are so different. Now that I've explained this accounting, it sounds simple. But please understand, 99.9% of people, when I hear them speak, they are speaking a legal framework, because the legal framework gives you the opportunity to judge others. And you like to judge others. And when you like to judge others, so it is a very delightful frame. वो अच्छा लगता है कि I can now look down on, everybody wants to be boss, right? While in an accounting framework, it's very difficult to figure out who is in debt and who is in credit. You never know. Is your child in your life to collect his debt, or is the child in your life to repay his? How do you know? And that becomes the complexity of, because आपको पता कैसे चलेगा in any relationship कि अमीर आदमी debit में है या credit. So the assumption in our mental framework is that someone with a lot of wealth has, in the Hindu framework, actually deep debt. But if he feels no, मैंने पुण्य किया है, I have got all this because this is the result of my credit, so I'm not in debt, I have a lot of credit. There is no objectivity over here. Remember, we are talking about spirituality. So it's how you live your life. Do you live your life as a creditor or as a debt? So I'm using the financial framework because you are an investment banker and you're a master at it. So you will understand this language far better, and your listeners will understand better. यहाँ पे बही खाता कभी खत्म नहीं होता. The balance sheet, as you said, first inning, second inning, third inning, there is no end of the match. ये चलता रहेगा, because till you figure out, so the Jains would say, till you figure out that debit and credit traps you in the game of snake and ladder, and you want to get out of the game. And that's the question. It's not about the ladder or the snake. It is both. And debit and credit, dono. So this is a very different way of thinking, which unfortunately, as Indians, we have forgotten, because for 200, all this time, we are using a very colonial framework to explain. And it's unfortunate that, we don't appreciate the nuances.
Is that I'm going to pick up this whole issue of fact checking, which we briefly touched upon in depth a little bit later on. But just moving on the same track of things, you see, during pandemic, people wanted to feel more spiritual. Who am I? Because they were all alone and living in four spaces of their apartments or their homes. And then suddenly this whole unlockdown happened and people wanted to go and explore and see for themselves and travel to these destinations. Is this something just a fad, or is it going to sustain for a long time? Yeah, in between we had one other issue of a Ram temple, and then there was this other whole issue. During the lockdown also, we had one of the Kumbh also, and obviously with a lot of restrictions, people did travel. Is this going to continue and grow in trend in India, or is it just ठीक है वो 2 साल लॉकडाउन में थे, चलो भैया एक बार let's wash ourselves off, thank the God, that we have survived, and then let's get back to life.
Pilgrimage as an idea started at a time when there was no industrial revolution. So people had no reason, we were hunter gatherers for a long, long time. We would travel and forage for food and move from one place to the other depending on availability of. So there was no settled economy. Then we settled down. We had farm, herd. There is no real reason to leave your village unless for trading. You will go to do a mela or you go somewhere else. There's no reason to travel. But when you stay in one place for a very long time, your mind doesn't expand. Nothing happens to you. You don't realize how big the world. And the purpose of travel in those days was to help you expand them. You would meet travelers and traders and holy men who would only travel and keep traveling and tell you things about the whole world. And it's a fascinating. So pilgrimage had a purpose, which sort of made you travel, not for survival, but make you ask foundational questions about your existence. Now that is in the pre-industrial era, when there was no concept of a holiday. Right? There is a day of rest which is there in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. 6 दिन काम करो, 1 दिन rest. So Friday ko the Muslims would rest, on Saturday the Jews would rest, on Sunday the Christians. Hinduism would have a concept of the seasons. कि एक समय होता है सोने के लिए, the God goes to sleep, God wakes up, God sleeps, wakes up, travel. But there's no idea of a holiday. These ideas emerged in the 19th century when the idle rich, अमीर लोग, उनके पास बहुत पैसा था, only they can afford a holiday. The laborers would get their holiday when the harvest season is over or after sowing season is over. So your life is very different. You don't need this. But we live in a what is called a productive era where you are expected to work 24. We are working more hard than any of our none of our ancestors worked as hard as we did in terms of hours. But we worked, 7 days a week, 24/7, high productive. The words are almost like bello. Now in this ecosystem, holiday came into the picture where you get a break. But now what do you do in a holiday? You would go to a seaside, you go to a physical resort. And in that, somebody said, no, I want something more. I've started feeling guilty about it. So now I need a good reason to take a break. And religion became a very powerful reason. मैं अयोध्या जा रहा हूँ sounds so much better than मैं Bangkok.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because at the end of the journey, do you come back a better person is the question. Or are you just going to be relaxed? Because to be relaxed, really, you can go to a neighborhood spa or you can just take a walk in a nearby garden, sit under a tree and find. So the pilgrimage has also become today an economy. It's part of an economic boom. The government has realized that internal travel can be increased if I get more and more people traveling to the religious spaces. So it's being promoted. And it is also a lazy form of spirituality like diet. There are two lazy forms of spirituality. One is आप खाना क्या खाते हो और दूसरा आप कहाँ कौन से मंदिर गए हो. So I have gone to the Char Dham, I've gone to Jyotirling. So I get my I can bragging rights आ जाके हम कैलाश पर. It's just another tour place. You went and saw something beautiful. You maybe saw a mountain, you saw a river, you saw a temple, you saw some artwork, and you came back home. You ate some food. You stood in line, which you may not have done in your entire life. Suddenly, the भगवान के सामने आप दर्शन कर लोगे. It's going to a spiritual retreat, which is good. I mean, it makes you feel good. Good, go for it. And these are practices which are there across the world. People have always done it. Some religions mandate. In Hinduism, it's not mandate. You don't have to. It is good to do it. They'll say अच्छा है. Then of course उसका marketing department होता है कि अगर आपने किया तो आप मोक्ष मिल जाएगा. So you create all these easy forms of liberation, right? You don't have to really work hard at thinking about it. Just come to temple, come 3 times to the temple, and a problem is solved. So it's a very good template that I give. आप यहाँ जाओ 12 बार अगर आप ज्योतिर्लिंग दर्शन करोगे तो आपका ये solve जाएगा. And that physicality of it has its own value and merit. And I think it's also time to take a break from the routine. When you go on these pilgrims, you start asking those questions which you otherwise wouldn't ask. You force your children to see a culture, expose them to things that you've never seen. So there are other collateral benefits, but it's not mandate. It's not something that fad तो नहीं है. People will travel. Question is why would they? Family को साथ लेके जाएंगे. What will you do when you go to a hill station? You need a set of tasks. Go see sunrise point, sunset point, eat 4 restaurant. Otherwise you get bored. We need an agenda. Temple, when you go to a pilgrimage, agenda is set for you. You have to do darshan. एक दर्शन किया तो बोलेंगे ये मंदिर तो वो मंदिर करो, ये करो. You have 20 things to do. And I think that's sort of a good itinerary which has been given. And now you have an agenda ki I have to go to all Krishna temples, I have to go to all Buddhist shrines, I have to go to all Jain shrines, I have to go to all Vishnu shrines, all Krishna shrines. So now, it's like those American tourists. I don't know if you've seen them. Elderly tourists, once they retire, they have nothing to do at home. So they spend every time at home planning the vacation, then they travel, and you see the Japanese tourists, the Chinese tourists just going, and it's like a process to be followed. There is agenda driven, there is photographs to be done, put it on Instagram. So बहुत काम है. So it keeps you busy and it sort of fills your life, gives you kind of a pleasure because you have an agenda and it's on your terms. You have decided where you want to go, how you want to go. And if you're with a social group, it's even more fun because you're going with your friends and family, and it sort of creates an activity. Your brain brain gets a series of, otherwise घर में बैठ के करोगे क्या, and that boredom gets to, and I think pilgrimage allows, it's sort of a mix between a holiday and a spiritual retreat and entertainment, sort of creates this lovely space.
Now comes the issue, where do we go? And that's where your book Pilgrim Nation comes in. And I must comment, I read your book and it's a great primer with a lot of facts and figures, or figures meaning illustrations in the book around the location, the deities, the gods, the goddesses, and the historical run up to how or why the temple or the location came into being. I have a very basic question. In your book, you have defined Bharatvarsh and connected it with pilgrimages. Can you elaborate for our audience how are these two interlinked? Because there are a whole host of other explaining sentences that you have mentioned in the book about sages, about travel that has gone into the making of the Bharatvarsh and these pilgrimages. So, for the benefit of our audience, we're not going to discuss all the chapters of the book because we want our audience to read the book like they read your book on happiness, the mantra for happiness. So, this is just a sneak into the concept of Bharatvarsh as defined by you. We would like you to explain for our listeners.
So the thing is, politicians decide what Bharatvarsh is. And I'm very wary of politicians because they are not interested in your welfare. They're interested in their power. And so when they use words like Bharatvarsh, I don't think, most of their children, as we know, are settled abroad. The patriotism has nothing to do with their love for the country. But when we say India, it's not a political entity. It's really a space where what defines India is you just have to map the pilgrim spots. You will notice that the pilgrim spots do not go north of the Himalayas.
Correct.
You will never have a pilgrim spot, although we'll say Akhanda Bharat, but there are really no pilgrim spots beyond Bangla. The Arakan, not even the Arakan, you don't even have it in the north. So that becomes, when I always tell people, what do you know about north? Which parts? Tell me the 3 pilgrimages in north. And beyond Kamakhya, they really don't know anything. There are, but they emerged over time. As Hinduism spread, pilgrim spots also. So you will have beyond Hindu Kush, the Hinglaj Mata temples in Pakistan is the farthest we have got shrine. And beyond Hindu Kush, really don't have any. So if you look at where the people traveled for, so when Shankaracharya talks about the Char Dham, when he says north, he says Badrinath. He doesn't say Kashmir. Although he travels to Kashmir, he goes to the king of Kashmir and he has lots of adventures in Kashmir and there are a lot of stories of him in Kashmir. But his northern pilgrim spot is in Uttarakhand, which is in, north of Uttar Pradesh. Badrinath, Kedarnath, that's where Kailas Parbat is there. So the north is very different. East is very different. East is Puri. It is the place of the sea where the sea comes. Go to the west. Originally it used to be the Hinglaj Mata in Baluchistan. But now people don't even know there is a place called Hinglaj Devi Mata out there. It is the Prabhas Tirth in Gujarat, which comes in. We go to the south. These places were not encountered in the Mauryan, the Kaveri Delta, the Sri Rangam temples there. These emerged much later after the 5th century age. And each and every river valley in the South India has these magnificent temples. The Kaveri Delta has it, the Vaigai River, the Madurai. You go northwards, where is Tirupati? It's on a mountain range. So when you talk about India, you really can map it through pilgrimage. Kahan pe log gaye? Shravan Kumar, the famous story of Shravan Kumar taking his parents to holy places, is one of the stories that we hear in the Valmiki Ram. Now, which places he was going, we don't know. But there is reference to a child taking his parents on a journey to holy places. I think even today, children feel it's an obligation for their old parents to go to these places. Although from a historical point of view, pilgrim traveling was not easy in the early days. You would be killed by, there is no security, there is no food, clothing, there's no hotel, there is no booking.com and there is no makemytrip.com. None of them exist. You have to manage on your own. Food, clothing, shelter, everything. So, but yet people traveled. We have these pilgrim routes. And I think India is made of these pilgrims, not by political ambitions, not by empires, not by kings, not even, and really pilgrim to some degree by traders. But traders would only travel to their markets. They wouldn't go across. And this is something that we overlook. And I think one way of explaining India is to say, where do you travel for pilgrim spots, and start making a map of India, and suddenly you will realize which parts of India the temples built, where did you go, and not even temples, just it could be a Prayagraj has no temple. It's basically a confluence of rivers. It could be Konkan has no temples, but it is the sea which is important. So these are the ideas that make you think of geography. So pilgrimage makes you think of geography. Geography makes you think about the country. And I think that is something I want to draw people's attention to, because, people keep saying, like the word Bharatvarsh really means the Ganga Yamuna region. If you ask technically original meaning, if you read the Rig Veda, it means is Punjab area. When you read the Mahabharata, it is Haryana area. When you read these inscriptions, the early inscriptions, it only refers to the Ganga river basin, nothing beyond. But that's a technical definition, not a emotional 21st century definition. But emotional 21st century definition for me is wherever the pilgrim spots are.
Now, your book is a great primer. 32 locations spread across different timelines in different sections, and very short description in a few pages of with a few illustrations. Very vivid. I visited 14 of those 32 locations for whatever spiritual grace or whatever grace, and many of them were very all of a sudden I'm in that city, there is something happening there, and I request someone for a visit to the temple, and that's organized on a very important day, and it's happened. So maybe I'm spiritual in nature, and it's happened. But I wanted to understand, what was your criteria to shortlist these locations for your book? There's so many of them, and I'm going to ask also why you missed out some of them as well in those eras that you have mentioned in your book. So is it that you visited those 32 locations, so that's why you have covered it factually, or is there some other reason?
So you see, if you want to make a book in India which is accessible to people, it cannot be more than 200-300 pages.
Correct.
So 200-300 pages is not more than 20,000-30,000 words.
अरे बट लोनली प्लैनेट तो एक जगह का एक सिटी का 400 पेज बना देता
But that's meant for people who are backpackers. Its purpose is very different. We are a culture which talks about Hinduism, but Hindu books are written by monks who have no experience of life. And I feel very sad when I see that, because the richness of the Hindu tradition is not made accessible. Even today, when people talk about Hindu books, they're really referring to fiction books written by young people who are doing science fiction mashup with history, with mythology, and say, मैंने Hindu किताब लिखी. Nobody is actually giving access to people to the vast traditions of India, the rituals, the customs, the practices, which I've been trying to do through my writing. In the last 30 years, I've written 50. So
Right.
now what is the purpose of these books? Is to give you a window to a large body of. This book is to give you a window into not the whole knowledge. It's not an encyclopedia. It is a window. And how do you see pilgrims? So I have got 20,000, so I have to rationalize and decide which ones. So I am going using geography to explain history. So what happens? It's like the North Indians who are completely clueless about South. When people
Right.
talk about the political Hindus of North India, only talk about Mathura, they'll talk about Kashi, they'll talk of Ayodhya. Nowadays they talk about Ayodhya, they didn't talk before. But it's usually Kashi, usually Mathura, Vrindavan. And it's almost as if Hinduism is isolated in the Ganga river base. And they have no understanding of what is happening east of India, the west of India, the south of India. So geography is very important. What are the temples in Kerala? What are the temples in Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh? Everybody has a different history. Everybody has a different geography. Krishna in Puri temple is very different from the Krishna of Udaipur, Srinathji, Nathadwara. Is very different from the Krishna of Guruvayur in Kerala. So geography has to come in, then history has to come in, because we are talking about a Vedic period, a Buddhist period, an Islamic period, British period, Maratha, so many histories, and everything changes over time. So how do you give people a taste of history and geography? 3,000 years of history, several thousands, million square kilometers of geography. You have to pick and choose, and it will never be comprehensive, but it will give you definitely more than what a person knew before you opened the book.
There's that one personal question here. Out of the 14 of the 32 locations mentioned in your book, many of those places that I visited were not a planned pilgrimage. I'm going there, so I'm planning to go there. And it just happened per se by chance. A very auspicious day, and I'm landed in that city for some work or for some other purpose. And somebody has organized a visit. And I feel very blessed as well that Bhagwan bulata hai, to hi aapko darshan milte hain. That's the saying per
Yes.
se. And in your book also, you mentioned that you were at a certain place passing by, and then you asked the driver, take me there, or is this temple somewhere around? And then you have gone there, and then you have experienced the vibe. Tell me, do you really feel the vibe of such places when you visit? You have illustrated in your illustrations in the book very beautifully the statues and the temple. I don't know how you have done it, but very beautiful and artistically done. Do you really feel that vibe when you are at that place? Is that something has called upon you to visit there?
See, the human mind is seeking connection. It is seeking patterns. It is seeking coincidences. You want to believe that your life is not a series of random occurrences without any cause or consequence. You want to believe you're in a matrix, that there is a plan out there and you are part of the blueprint. So our mind starts creating these patterns, and it makes us very happy when some things like this happen. For example, you go somewhere and suddenly there is a huge ceremony happening, and you start giving it a story that, I went on this day, this happened. So a series of events, our mind starts to turn it into a construct that makes us feel we are part of a larger narrative. So you can say, is it a truth? It is your truth. It is not dirt. There is no scientific way to prove it. But it is a story that makes you happy. When you narrate the story to people, they feel happy. They feel a sense of wonderment. Indians will understand when you say Bulawa Aaya. If you speak to a non-Indian, he will find you a very bizarre. He will not understand what you are going. A person. So it is in a particular ecosystem, these stories make sense. In outside that ecosystem, it will not make sense. So I always tell people, when people have visions of Mother Mary, it is usually in Christian nation, right? So the visions come as per, you see jinns only in Islamic creation.
Right.
So you start seeing rishis and maharishis and devatas in your Hindu frame. Our mind wants this, because otherwise life can be pretty lonely out, to feel that really nobody is looking at. There is no witness to your life, that you are walking on the road without a witness. And especially when you are super successful, you want to be seen, right? That's darshan. हम भगवान का दर्शन करने ही नहीं जाते, हम भगवान को कहते हैं कि हाँ आप हमारा दर्शन. And that is a very great feeling, दर्शन की. So that is a very powerful Indian idea, to be seen. इसलिए भगवान को हम आंख देते, we gift eyes to the God. चक्षुदान, आजकल वो जो प्राण प्रतिष्ठा बोल रहे हैं. And these are all about being witnessed by the divine, not witnessing the divine as much as being witnessed by the divine. And we believe that that's why हम भगवान के घर जाते. I have seen, when you go to pilgrim spots, there are places in Hardwar where you write the name and you see that your ancestors visited that place, and you feel happy that you're part of a larger narrative, that not a random floating piece of paper, but it's part of a book, which part of a chapter, part of a series of books. So वो world wide web के part बन, but you feel nice. You are not a lonely computer. You are part of a worldwide network. And I think these stories help us. Now, as I said, it's your truth. It's the way our mind conceives. Do animals feel it? Plants feel it? We don't.
Siddharth, I have a clarifying question here. You talked about the Ranganatha temple, and that you mentioned is in Tamil Nadu. The illustration, the statue of the reclining god is also there in Mysore, in Ranganatha
Yes.
temple. So
Yes.
I'm just
So there are three
wondering.
Ranganatha temples.
So your description in the chapter was very much similar to the one near Mysore. So is it a misprint or a GPS
No,
problem?
no, there are three Ranganatha temples. In the Kaveri River has three islands. Each island has a Ranganatha temple. So the one which I have described is near Srirangam. There's Srirangam, which is in Tamil Nadu. There is one.
Got it.
They are river islands, which were taken to the Ranganatha temple. So the Mysore one was made popular by the Vodayar king.
Correct.
The Srirangam temples were made popular by the Nayaka. So different kings, but in terms of the sheer size, I think, if I'm not, I have done the Srirangam temple in among Sri Vaishnavas. That is a very big shrine.
Correct.
And it's one of the largest temple complexes in India. And therefore, I have mentioned that. As I use it as an anchor. But if you go to Thiruvananthapuram, which is in Kerala, it also has a Ranganath. So
I
that
visited that as well.
icon, it's not there in North India at all. You never see this image in North India. You don't
You
see it in
don't have a
Maharashtra.
sleeping deity or a god in any temple in North India.
In North. So this whole idea of Ananta Shayana, it's there in Nepal, by the way, where it is identified as Buddha Nikanda. So it's there in Nepal, and it's a very beautiful shrine on the water. So it depends on which part of India. That's why history becomes important, geography becomes important. Vishnu temples by far are more popular in the south than north. In fact, in Gujarat, the Vishnu temples have become Krishna temples. So if you go to Dwarka, it is really a Vishnu temple which has become a Krishna temple. So Chaturbhuj or Guruvayur temple, for example,
Correct.
is the images of a Vishnu, but it is worshipped as a Krishna image. So these are, of course, more for those who are academically inclined, these information. But I wanted people to become aware of these points also. Otherwise, this knowledge should not be only with scholars. And in the absence of knowledge, that's where politicians come up with bizarre ideas. I'm very allergic to them.
I have a big point of discussion on that as well, because I'm going to take this very quickly and shortly from now. One thing, there have been a lot of seers in the recent past. You have the Osho Show in Pune, Tera Sacha Sauda, Ram Rahim, then Shri Shri Ravi Shankar, then Satya Sai Babas. And those locations become a huge pilgrim town suddenly. And after their death or after they are gone, it just becomes a ghost town. So, what is it so different that a pilgrim location, as described in your book, has sustained generations and generations of travelers and pilgrims versus these locations that have basically just not sustained it? What do you see here?
See, no spiritual location lasts for a very long time. It rises and falls, rises and falls. Usually, things that are located with nature are usually the more popular ones. So, like Kumbh Mela, people will say has happened for thousands of years. It probably did not. There is something called Magh Mela. In the month of Magh, when the Uttarayan ke baad, there is, because Uttarayan is a astronomical phenomenon which happens every year. Magh Mela is happening in the Gangetic plain for as long as we can remember. Whether it was the Kumbh Mela or not, we don't know. Historically, it's barely 200-300 years old as per records are concerned. Obviously, some Magha Mela, because of certain astronomical connections, become important. But there is no temple which has lasted for forever. It's a combination of economic reasons, political reasons. These Babajis, they happen that a group of people find joy in their ideas or in their presence, just their presence. Many times it's just their presence. Wo Guru ko dekh ke acha laga. It's usually that I feel like I go and get a charge. I get an electric charge from. And for most people, that's what they mean by spirituality. They get a high. They get I've had people who say that when I go mountaineering every day, I come back, I feel charged. Another person says I go to the Babaji and so really you're looking for an external source of energy, which makes you revalidates your life. And either it's a god or a temple or a tree or a forest, and it varies. And some shrines become popular and survive. Some don't. Like Khajuraho temple did not survive. As the kings moved away, the temple just died, just ceased. Nothing to do with the Muslims or the British or anybody. The temple just ceased to become. Or Hirapur Yogini temple in Bhubaneswar, which very few people visit. Nobody knew it existed until about 100 years ago when it was rediscovered. People had forgotten about Nalanda University and Bodh Gaya. It was rediscovered only in the 19th century. So pilgrim sites come and go over time. And pilgrims came. All these Buddhist sites had lost their popularity, which they were like Bodh Gaya shrine as we know it today was sold by the Mughals to that region, was sold to Shaivite monk. And from what I know is that Bodh Gaya had become a Shiva temple until there was a court case and it was reclaimed by the Buddhists. So there are many Jain temples which have been claimed by Hindus. There are all kinds of stories. These are all dramas on thing, but they keep happening. So temples keep going and coming. They have a life cycle of their own. Every temple has a life cycle. So it's not that they're eternal, even though we keep the word Sanatan. It doesn't exist. The temples itself are barely 1,000-year-old phenomenon. Before 1,000 years, very few temples.
And those were the wooden ones in your book in the north.
No, see, in the north there were wooden temples, but you see, Hinduism is not based on temples. You can worship. You do a Satyanarayan puja in the house. You have a pot, some flowers in it. You put some grain in it. Do puja. After the puja, you throw away the pot. You throw away the flowers. There's no trace of the shrine anymore. But you have done your puja, right? But there is no physical shrine. And this is really the most organic shrines that existed in India for thousands of years. There was no physical. This temple thing is a very political. Kings wanted to show off. Ki, mere paas itna paisa hai. I can afford to build these grand temples and all that. Only rich people could do that. But the common man didn't need temples. He would गांव के बाहर एक पत्थर की पूजा करता था. And he would go there once a year to do the puja. That's good enough. Or a tree, or of the most powerful, I feel the greatest shrines are the Devarai, which are a sacred grove where you don't farm. And now they are being destroyed in the name of development across India. Devarais are the temple where you go to, don't to visit. When you enter the Devarai, you become part of the divine, because the whole orchard is a divine thing. So if you go to Goa, Karnataka side, you can see the Devarais. In Manipur, when you go, you have these forests where you're not even allowed to take a blade of grass. So these are the original temples. They were not really man-made structures. These were spaces that we said is spiritual. कि यहाँ कुछ नहीं करना है, farming नहीं करना है, herding नहीं करना है, mining नहीं करना है, should remain biodiverse. They may not have used these words, but they are primal spaces of the goddess and gods. वहाँ नहीं जाना. And I think these are original temples, not built with. That is okay. We want to do it. That's good for. Yeah, it's good for you if people want to do it. But these I personally find great joy, especially in this world of industrialization, and I think nature is the best divine.
Devdutt, what are your top picks out of the 32? Devdutt's list.
Well, the top picks are Bombay.
Achha.
That's home.
That's where you live. when I live.
And the film stars are
Number
the
two,
new pilgrim spots, right? People
that's
go to
your
Shah
end.
Rukh Khan's house. And
Correct.
no, but it's important. See, they're also going there for the same thing. The same reason why people go to meet a Guruji is exactly why thousands and thousands of people go to meet Shah Rukh Khan or they go to meet Amitabh Bachchan. It's just you feel energized and you want to call it spirituality. But this feeling that मैंने उनको देखा, like, when you travel in a flight and suddenly in your flight, a film star walk, you feel, hey, go and tell your friends, Kareena Kapoor was in flight or somebody was in your flight, and everybody looks at you as if you have done something magical. But it just feels good. Your day becomes a little brighter. You walk with a skip in your step, and I think that has its value for me.
I would call that a cineto spirituality.
Hmm. Yeah.
70 mm.
हाँ, वो आ जाता है, आता है, जाता है.
I want to move to the Jainism side of the second book. Lot of stuff, lot of facts I didn't know. I have a lot of Jain friends, Digambar, Svetambar, Pitambar, a lot of stuff, and they do their fasting at the time of the Paryushan, and I really understood the concept and things in your book. I wanted to understand what are their pilgrim and how they differ from the Hindu pilgrim, and many of them that you just talked about are like Hindu or Jains, but Hindu but Jain. And we also have a lot of crossbreeding happening in our own community of Marwaris because we come from the same region, and some
Yes.
have adopted Jainism, some are still continue to be Hindus. So I wanted to understand what are those locations, the 22 Tirthanams, or what are those in the Jain religion?
So the places, there is this called as Panchakalyan, the life of. So when you look at Buddhism, since Buddhism is more popular, we have the shrine where he was born. Where was Buddha born? Where did he attain enlightenment? Where did he give his first lecture? Where did he achieve parinirvan? Where did he die? So these spots become important, and people travel to spots. Now there are 24 Tirthankar. Each one has a story of where they were born, where they attained enlightenment, where they gave the first lecture, where did they attain nirvana. So each of these becomes a pilgrim spot. Places like Ayodhya were very, very closely associated with Tirthankars. There are places in Bihar which are closely associated with Tirthankars. Places and it's in Gujarat. There are places where people have had vision. So Shravan Benegola is where
Yeah.
it's only for the Digambars, not for the for the Shwetambars. The Digambars have the Shravan Benegola shrine, which is of he's not a Tirth. Bahubali is the first boy to become a who follows the Jain path. So in the Digambar tradition, in the Shwetambar tradition, is not an important. But his statue is very famous. If you go to Karnataka, there are many of these basadis,
Yeah.
and you find these things. So it's a Karnataka. I've met Jain friends who are not even aware that Jainism was once there in South India, and that Karnataka is a major center of Jain. And these very old images are found in Tamil Nadu. They are found in Andhra Pradesh. They are found in Odisha, which people don't know about. So there is a pilgrim. So this pilgrim spots come like Palitana, Mount Abu, and one of the things that many Jains would do is, as part of their religious obligation to spread the word of Jainism, they would create an iconograph. So a temple has to be built or a carving has to be made. So near Gwalior there are these caves which
Correct.
have Jain statue. If you go to Maharashtra, there's Mangi Tungi caves, and these are these places in North Maharashtra towards Nasik which have Jain places. So the Jains would fund these exercises to build these sites as part of their kind of legacy, leaving behind legacy for the
Outreach.
future generation, so that हमारे बाद भी लोगों को याद रहे, because we were not a writing culture, right? Although the Jains did produce manuscripts for a period of time, it was really statues that people would see and ask questions. कौन किसकी statue? So that culture was there in Buddhism, that was there in Jainism also. Buddhism is more famous, those big statues, Kanheri caves and Bhajja caves, Ajanta, Ellora. We're not very familiar with the Jain shrine. So those are the points I want to draw attention. So the whole purpose of writing the book is, Jains are less than 1% of India, but they contribute to over 10 or 20% of the GDP.
Correct.
And I think the least ones they deserve is to appreciate the religion that they follow. And I found a lot of understanding of Indian trade practices and wisdom in the Jain. When I was studying Jainism, I really I understood Hinduism better. And and it sort of helps you understand how different ways of thinking emerge. And the Jain pilgrim site is foundationally different from a Hindu pilgrim site, because Hindus is about bhog chadhana, naivedya and prasad. This is not there in the Jain.
Correct.
There is no bhog because the Tirthankar doesn't want any. There is no debit or
Correct.
credit. If there is no debit or credit, then why do you don't have to give anything to receive anything? There is no giving, there is no receive. And that is an interesting idea. Although, because the rituals, everybody enjoys rituals in certain Jain communities, you do have this desire to perform like Abhishek, and there are these small rituals in some of the shrines where you go to Palitana, use rituals, and since there is no priest, you have to do it amongst themselves. You have to decide which ritual to do. And if there are 10 people people who want to do the same rituals, since they're traders, they have created a system of, what is it called? They start Christie's में क्या होता है, बोली लगती है, keep
हाँ, auction.
auction होता है, and you do an auction, and the money that is collected through auction, because that's the only way to, it's a democratic process, so to prevent people from fighting, create an auction, and then the money that is collected is then used for the maintenance of the shrine, which I found is a very clever and interesting way of managing without the need for Brahmin, without need for a plea class. And the monks would theoretically shouldn't take anything and receive anything. And I think these ideas of receiving, giving, debit, credit, my understanding became clear after I read it. In Buddhism, Jainism, in Hinduism, it's not so clear. It's extremely clear. The clarity in Jainism is very nice because it's not that vast. So it allows you to understand it much better. And I think that helped me understand Hinduism far better.
I want to move into spiritual counter trends that are happening, not just in India, but globally as well.
Sure.
And the first counter trend I wanted to talk about is the weed. And we did a podcast with Yogi Cameron earlier on weed, Veda, yoga. And what we are finding is the younger cohort, especially 50% of Gen Z, are interested in non-traditional. They call that quote unquote non-traditional spirituality, which is to visit these locations and have some intoxicants. And they believe that that helps them in personal growth and spiritual exploration and clarity of purpose. And I understand in our own thing, they would be called followers of Shiva and tantric practitioners, according to you as well in the book. Now, how would you react to this counter trend which is emerging now?
So it's nothing new about. It's been around for thousands of years. There's always, every society will have people who don't align with a model. So there is an idea and there's a counter idea. That's always there in every society. Nothing new or unique. In some societies, like the Sufism is a counter trend to Sunni and Shia ideas because it's highly individualistic. It involves song and dance, which is considered haram in Sunni practice. The idea of singing and dancing to God is considered haram, but Sufism uses song and dance to connect with the divine. So even in an orthodox tradition, or as we understand Islam today, you see these counter trends. You find this in Christianity, you find this in Jewish traditions, the Kabbalah, and many of the occult practices involve altered states of consciousness. And altered states of consciousness can be achieved breathing practice. Just by breathing, I can create alternate states. And that's why breathing is a very important, pranayama is an important thing. Used intelligently, it can really do things to your head. Some people don't want to do the breathing, so they want something else. So they do other forms of sensory deprivation. You have Nirjala Upavas, where you don't eat, you don't drink, you stay awake the whole night. So Jagran. These are all various ways in which you create sensory states and alternate states of awareness. And in the old shamanic traditions, we believed that this will help me enter those realms inside my body and outside and understand another mystical world. Some people also then used drugs, so medications. There are lots of herbal potions in South America. Mushrooms have been used, plants have been used. So this is a very old traditions. Even tribal communities have it, shamanic traditions have it. The question is, at the end of all this, do you become a better person? Do you have less anxiety? Are you a nice person, or do people think you're still the jerk? It's like people I've seen who go to Vipassana and they come back and they're as horrible as they always were, but they are at peace with their being horrible. They're like, no.
They've accepted it.
They have accepted it. Because see, as I said, a spiritual journey has become a very isolationist and personal journey. And we don't see the people around us. That is a big lacune in modern spirituality, where you don't see yourself as part of a ecosystem. And most of these people are going into these, when they say Shivji, they're meaning of, I'm away from the whole world, I'll do whatever I want to do. But even Shivji has to get married and come to Kashi and be part of the ecosystem. So Kailas Wale Shiva, who is alone, and Kashi Wale Shiva, who has to live with people, very, very different. And I think that Indian thoughts draws your attention to these various traditions and without judgment. So without judgment, so long as, some people just walk to the beat of a different drummer. They want that path and you can't stop them. Not everybody will follow this one method. Standardization never works. Customization is always the answer. Diversity will always rock because nature is diverse and mutation is what creates new life. So nature doesn't allow you to lock things in a system. Somebody will break this, and that is the way it works. And these are perhaps people who will break this in their own way.
Very well put on this point. I want to talk about conspirituality, which is a new word that's come out. A lot of it has been written on the web and a lot of thinkers are also talking about it. This is the new age spirituality, which is extreme right and extreme wokeism. Now, this is now emerging post-pandemic. Everything is getting challenged, whether it's on the extreme right or on the extreme wokeist side. Why are we bringing this into spiritual thinking? I'm still at a loss. And this is the only political question I want to ask you.
See, in the last 100 years, we have become, what was considered to be colonial in the 9th century has become global in the 20th century. And everything is seen in terms of right and wrong, good and bad, oppress. We don't use the word good and bad, right and wrong. We use the word oppressor and oppressed. And everybody's used. The right wing uses it,
Correct.
the left wing uses it. The right wing hates the left wing and starts calling them woke. Woke is a very specific meaning. The right are considered patriarchy. Everything's patriarchy. So what has happened is, again, it comes from the Western notion of I am right and everybody else is. And this is the model which has been universalized by global, people are sending their children to America to study. And that's what your children are going to come back. They're going to come back with these ideas, and they'll come back because all the intelligent and all the rich people and all the bureaucrats of India and all the elite of India are sending their children to Europe to study. And they're bringing these values to India. And what values are they bringing? The world is about self-centeredness. It is about only I matter. I know the truth. My thoughts are the only important, and everybody else is wrong. So if I am right leaning, then I'll say left is wrong. When I'm left leaning, I'll say right is wrong. Because everybody other than is this kind of isolation, individualism is a poison that we have invited. You are bell mujhe maar. We have told this poison to enter our house without realizing the traditional Indian models would be that there are multiple truths in the world. Look at Jainism, anekantavad. Multiple truths exist, and we have to negotiate our way through multiple. Nobody's right, nobody's. The woke has a point of view which is valid. The right has a point of view which is also valid. How will the two live together is the bigger question than defeating them in a territorial battle. So this
My
legal.
point here is, Devdat, don't they read books of yours? There's so much of rich material for them to understand traditions, they understand values, they need to understand and see where, they need to be judgmental after kind of imbibing that knowledge rather than just being senselessly, rightist or wokist, which I do not know. And I'm really scared because both my kids have studied in the US and one of them is going to graduate next year. And looking at what has happened during the COVID time and now, I'm really scared, was it a bad decision to send them abroad to study and become better people and better persons?
Remember, I used the word legal framework and accounting.
Correct.
The Western world, when you say legal, why do you want to judge? You judge because you have been told that is the way to live your life because that's the legal frame. India was built by the lawyers. Mahatma Gandhi was a lawyer. Sardar Patel was a lawyer. All of them were lawyers. They went to London to study law, and they studied that the legal system is the best system in the world. What do legal people do? They argue. That's what lawyers do all the time. So your children, critical thinking क्या है? Argue. Science कैसे होता है? Argue. Debate. Argue करो, debate करो, argue करो, debate करो. It is all about winning the debate. It is about winning the argument. It is not about learning new things. Curiosity is not encouraged. Victory in debate is celebrated. So this is the education system that we have adopted, accepted, and then we are wondering why things are going wrong. अगर आपने गंदा खाना खाया है तो बदहजमी होगी ही ना. तो गंदा खाया हमने खाया है. How many people know about the account? How many people have been told about coexistence? How many people have been told that how to live with each other, figure out ways of living with each other? This is not a Western model. Abrahamic religions don't have it, and Abrahamic religion manifests as secular. Secularism is just another form of Abraham. Look at all the Hindu gurus, the way they are talking nowadays. When I hear some of the gurus talking, they are only telling what is right, what is wrong. You go to Gurudwara, they are saying this is the right way to go to Gurudwara, this is a wrong way to Gurudwara. Punish karo, inko haath pair tod do. The gurus are talking like that. You see this in temples, the way they're talking. The yogis are talking that way. They're wearing all these colorful attire. They've got all things on their head, and because they're Babaji, they have got this freedom to tell this is the right way to live, that is the wrong way to live. Ye khana khao, waise karo. And I'm like, oh my God, why are you constantly judging, rather than telling people repay your debt? How many people talk about repaying your debt? You use the word moksha, mukti. These words are based on a financial ecosystem, balance sheet. Nobody talks about repaying. Nobody talks about karma is all about debt. Ramayana, Mahabharata, even Ram and Krishna get curses because they do actions that create debts. Now, these are things that nobody teaches, talks. It's not part of our education. So naturally, we are going to have wokes and rights, and the moment somebody argues, remember they're following the legal frame. And that's the Western model. And we know what happens. In the end, you'll have a Palestinian war, you'll have a Israel war. Each each one arguing beautifully, eloquently, and इंसानियत में से कोई नाम ही नहीं रहा. Because if I am right, I have the right to general. If I am right, so that has become the danger. This is the extreme way of which we have now universalized. China and Japan protect themselves by building walls, firewalls, and not letting foreigners enter their country. These have always been sealed ecosystem, and India manages it in a very different way. And that is one of you see this in we are an unusually democratic country which moves in one direction, then moves in another direction. It will keep moving in different directions, not letting any one person become too powerful. Because we do not believe there is one God, we believe there are many gods. Uska matlab hai there are many truths in the world. Now, replace the word God with truth. And if you have one God, you will always argue. But if you have many gods, you will have many truths. You won't argue. You will listen. You will have conversation. And this is what has gone wrong. Whenever I hear a person arguing, I don't talk. I just smile. Because I'm like, अच्छा भैया तू जो बोल रहा है सच. खत्म हो गई बात. I
अब
have no
सच के
desire to
ऊपर आई
convince you.
वांटेड टू टॉक अबाउट फैक्ट चेक. प्रॉब्लम इज चैट जीपीटी ने इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज से सब दे हैव टेकन एवरीथिंग फ्रॉम द इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज. दे हैव नॉट पास थ्रू आवर ट्रेडिशनल संस्कृत, script and all these languages, our local dialect. Now the issue comes what you have been mentioned. The guy is coming with a certain point of view of Hinduism or a certain seer or a certain priest talking about this. How do you counteract this trend that is especially in the social media with these reels and all this? You do this has been talked in Rig Veda, or you do this is coming from Ayurveda. No fact check, total falsehood. And how do we lead? I think this needs a reawakening itself about what you have researched deeply and talked about in your book. Nobody reads these days. It's all the real phenomena and then wokist and rightist phenomena that's corrupting the thoughts of the younger generation.
The concept of a savior doesn't exist in Hindu because there is no, this whole idea that the world is a problem and I have to solve it is again Abrahamic. India is ऐसे ही दुनिया है. The world has always been like, you don't have to carry the burden of solving a problem that doesn't exist. So this assumption that the world is going to some crisis and you are going to save the world is exactly what Judaism teaches you, Christianity teaches, Islam teaches, and Sikhism is going in that direction, although that's not the origin and way it was. But Hinduism is also becoming that, right? We are reading the Bhagavad Gita as Krishna has come to save the world. Krishna को savior बना दिया, राम को savior बना दिया, politicians अपने आप को savior बना रहे हैं कि हम हिंदू खतरे में हैं और हम उसको रक्षा करेंगे. See, these are all savior mindset. I will save you. Salvation. These are not Hindu ideas. These are not Jain ideas. They're not because यहाँ पे तो क्या भैया ऋण मुक्त हो, ऋण. Everybody is in debt. See, as long as people don't use the accounting language, it is not Indian way of thinking. So that is problem. So I don't carry the burden of saving the world. Nor do you. We can enjoy a great conversation and hopefully enlighten a few people and make people realize the debts in their life and lower the burden of debt and help them write off loan. And I think that's all we can do in our life. क्या आगे क्या? So write off your loans, repay your debt और मोक्ष की तरफ जाओ और बाकी दुनिया चलती रहेगी snakes and ladder खेलते हुए.
One last personal question, Devdutt. All your books have beautiful illustration. Is this your MBBS diagramming that is coming to use in your books and publication?
So I think it is you're right, it's my science background. It's that I don't believe you can explain things without visualizing.
Correct.
And for me, therefore, illustrations are an integral part, not just illustrations. I like tables, I like bullet points, I like flowchart. I like those models, like a PowerPoint presentation, where just say we use so many things. I feel in the humanities, people don't use these techniques. And I enjoy you. And I found people find them very useful because they evoke thoughts.
Correct.
And so I use them as diagrams which complement my.
That's a great conversation, Devdutt, on the topic of Bharatvarsh, Pilgrim Nation. One thing I have now realized, if you want spirituality and you want to do pilgrimage, go alone on that self-exploration journey. But on behalf of our team and your team, I really love to thank you for a great conversation. I learned a lot apart from reading the book, and I would urge our audiences also to look at your book, the two books as well, and look forward to having a lot of feedback from our audience. I'm sure our next season could be motivated by this talk. I don't know.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bharatvarsh, Jai Hind.